Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Latched Mama Podcast. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Latched Mama Podcast is a podcast for the mothers in the trenches of motherhood. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about setting some boundaries, taking care of what's ours, letting go of the rest, and all of the freedom that can come from learning how to do that.
You're listening to Latched Mama Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Wirt, busy mom of 6 and owner of LatchedMama.com. Join us each week as we talk about pregnancy, breastfeeding, postpartum, and all things motherhood.
Hi, friend.
Hi.
I feel like we have not seen each other. It has been a madhouse of illness and drama and sickness and nuttiness.
We need a dinner.
Pizza. We need we
street.
need something. I've literally just started grabbing food as I see it right now. I feel like I haven't slowed down and actually eaten a meal in so long. Yeah, we need to do that and connect. So a few things have transpired, nothing big. But Lindi and I are kind of sitting in this place where we're trying to understand how when you become a mom, suddenly it's like this mental shift, and maybe not for everybody, but I think for us, where you just start trying to take care of all of the things. And you start trying to take care of course, the doctor's appointments and the dentist appointments and the milestones for the kids and all of that stuff. But then you start taking care of the mental weight of everything. And how much of that mental stuff that you see that you want to wrap your arms around and fix in other people, not just your kids, is actually yours to take on, or is it other people to take on for themselves? And I don't know. I feel like it's this weird thing that happens when you become a mom for some people, that you just want to start just fixing all the things. And we can't fix all of the things.
No. And I mean, I've talked about this with several different people, probably my husband and whoever else. But I think for me, before you're pregnant or you are pregnant, so you don't have kids yet, things are very much in control, if you will. It's like you know what to expect, what you're doing tomorrow, what you're doing the next day, and all these things. And then you have this little one, and I think your life is just it feels so out of control.
Yep.
Because it's just so different and it's so new. And now here's this little person. So it's like this grasp to get back into control. And so to feel in control, and as my husband and I talk about all the time, you want to control the things to feel like you're in control.
Yes.
So that's what I would do. And I still fight it on a daily basis, weekly basis. But you want to control everything around you to feel like you're in control and kind of grounded, where it's not, not really the healthiest solution, and you don't have to do that. But that was me.
I think it's the complete opposite happens too, is where you totally end up finding control is in the boundaries, is in the idea that you can say no to things, or that somebody's feelings that they're feeling, you know what? They're not yours, you know what? And they're not your responsibility to take on. And just because they're around you, or they're in your circle, or, they're somebody that you care deeply about, does not mean that you necessarily need to be in them with them. Yeah. Which is such an incredible thing. I mean, I've learned as I've developed this company and grown it and looked at my boundaries at various times over the years, and they've changed and they've flexed, and then they've gotten tighter, and then they flexed. And it's just this bizarre kind of process of learning that I used to think that it was just from a bandwidth perspective. If I had it in the tank, I should be giving it. So if there was somebody around me that was hurting or had feelings, and I slept well the night before, or I'd eaten, or all the kids were fine, and I had something in my tank, I should give it to them. And I'm starting to realize sometimes you need to hold on to what's in the tank, that extra stuff, because the people who really do require it from you, like your kids and your partner and those really close friends, are the ones that really need it when it's there. So
I look back on as being a young mom, and when I had my first child, my husband was busy taking the CPA exam. So when I was up nursing or pumping at 3:30, 4 a.m., he was studying. And so that's kind of where we started. And, we both had taken on a lot. And so this was my thing. This is what I did. And it was a bit robotic because I was new, and it wasn't as relaxing, and he was stressed. So there was just some stress going on. And as we grew and as we had kids, I would just take on more. And I would just do
and
more.
more.
And I would just
Yep.
give more. And, you know, it's kind of been that journey as looking back, and even now in the day to day is finding the balance, as you said, and recognizing, do I have to be in there?
Yeah.
You know, do I really need to be in there? I can still offer support and I can offer communication, but it's okay to step back, and
Yeah.
it's okay to do that. But it's not easy, and I think it takes some time.
Yeah. And I mean, we
do.
talk about this all the time on the podcast, is that like literally we are human beings and we are wired for connection. So what does that mean? And like maybe that is where some of that loneliness comes from motherhood, is that you just don't have it in the tank to feed the connection, but the connection is actually what's going to refill your tank.
Right.
So it's really, really fascinating. And honestly, it's in many cases that deep connection too that's going to fill it more, and that deep connection is going to require more from you and the more feelings from you. But I think you have to be, what I'm learning, especially as things grow in terms of chaos in my life, is that I have to be really strategic of who gets it and who doesn't. Like I can't really give it out anymore to people who aren't going to give it back to me in some way. And I think that that's a lesson. I mean, there are a few people in my life that are not my children that I care for, that I know that the relationship is not going to be reciprocal to an extent, you know? But I think that each of those relationships that I go into now are very thought through, as opposed to in the past, I would just throw out care and, you know, kindness like it was confetti. And I think that kindness, I think you can do that with like the little things, but that care aspect of it, that is going to tap your tank.
Yeah.
And when you have so many people who you are absolutely without a doubt required to give it to, like your relationships and your children and stuff, you just have to be careful. And that was something that I did not learn until very, very far into motherhood.
I think that awareness piece is just so important, because like you said, there are some directions that really there's no choice. And it's not even a choice for me. they're my family, they're my children, my relationship. Like you're going to put everything you have into that. It's kind of how it works. But those extra ones that are so important for a connection, but you know, it's hard to even use the word strategic. I'm sure you felt kind of like weird using that word,
absolutely.
because you just want to be kind and big heart and give and give and give. But when you are pulled in so many directions, I think you really do just need to take a minute and be aware of yourself and what you need and what you can give. And maybe today I don't have anything, and that's okay. And or this week or this month or whatever, and you know, that is okay.
Or like, I know I have something to give, but I'd rather actually hold on to it because, you know, one of the kids wasn't feeling well this morning, so I don't know what my night is going to be, and are they going to fight with each other? So you know what, that little bit that I feel like I have to give today, I actually want to hold on to it, you know, and I want to be selfish with it. And I want to give it where I know that I'm going to need to give it later. You know, and I think that there's like this beauty of saying no, of literally just taking a step back and saying, you know what? No, like I don't want to go to that event, because I know what all I'm going to do in that event is I'm going to be extroverted, or, you know, Sally Joe's going to be there and she's going to want to talk about the divorce she's going through, or, you know, her pregnancy. And I literally just can't show up in a way that I'm going to feel proud of showing up right now. So I'm going to say no, and I'm going to focus on, you know, the people who really need it and the people who are there. But I think that the other, like the flip side of this is granting people the grace and the respect to have those boundaries, especially if those boundaries are changing, especially if they've been there for you before, you know, truly being able to look at their life and say, hey, you know what, like she's pulling back. That doesn't mean she doesn't care. That just means that she cares about people more than she cares about me. And it's a really, really terrible, terrible thing to say. But I think that we all owe each other that. Is like, hey, this season's really hard, and you know, she's not going to have much in her tank, and she's going to have to give it to her kids and her husband. It's like after you have a baby, you know, is that friendship still going to be there? You know, that friendship will only be there if that other person in that relationship is strong enough to realize that, you know, it's just a season.
Yeah, and I know change is hard, but change is inevitable, and it's going to happen all the time in all the places, at home, at work, wherever you are. And I do think it's not always easy to sit in that spot if you're not in the healthiest of spots, which we all have our ups and downs and our tough weeks and months. But yeah, that's a hard place to be, but to come to a place of respect
Yeah.
and acceptance
Yeah.
for that other person is really important.
I think, you know, for the last 3 months, I think it started about right before Christmas, myself and the company have been getting a little dogged on social media, and in a way that it's been very, very hard for me to manage the emotional impact of it. And it's weird because when stuff happens, sometimes I mean, it's always going to bring up past stuff. It's going to bring up stuff in yourself, your insecurities. What does this mean? What does this mean about human beings? Like it brought up a lot of stuff for me, but then somehow I have to lead through it. And because it's so work-based, it's been a hard little journey for me the past few months. Definitely have been learning a lot about myself and people in general, but it's been interesting to watch our friendship go through it, because I don't think a year ago, 2 years ago, it would have been able to weather what it's weathering right now. I mean, I've gone from cocooning to needing Lindi to not wanting to see another human being to not eating to eating all the food to, I mean, I've just been all over the place, just because I've had to try to figure out where those boundaries are again. And it's not that I don't love you. It's not that I don't want to go walking every morning. It's these weird things that you have to manage when you're going through stuff. But there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that you would be there for me in any way that I need you to be there. What?
Yeah.
No,
I love it.
It's but so I mean, true. It's just really cool. I mean, the weather's going to change. This is going to pass. The spring's going to come again. We're going to be walking every day again. We're going to get energy back. We're going to get creative process back. But it has worn and hurt almost all of us here, and we've all had to navigate it a different way because you come to relationships with different stuff, you know? And it's such an interesting, beautiful thing when you can work on yourself and your stuff enough to the point where you have those real relationships that can weather the storms that inevitably come from somewhere.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that little bit of extra, just going back to what you said about, you know, having a bit of extra in the tank and just not just doling it out wherever just because you have extra. And I think going through these really hard months, like I'm sure there's probably been days where you have that little bit extra and you're keeping it, just knowing that, you know, this hard time is not necessarily short. Yep. So maybe we could have fit in a walk, or we could have whatever, but it just was not needed. It wasn't the thing that day that really needed to happen. And I also wanted to add, at least for me, with having that little bit of extra, like my husband will ask, you know, what are those other kind of things on the calendar that he's not always in, whether it's appointments or things like that. And he's like, well, what is something that I could take and do? And I was like, well, honestly, like, it's okay. He's like, well, I know it's okay. And I know you don't have a lot, but like, there's something with somebody else being able to help and what that can honestly do for them. Yeah. Kind of go back to that. I forget that podcast we listened to, but about helping, about doing something for somebody else. So if you have that little bit of extra in the tank, but like you could get help in and somebody else could do it, or somebody else offers. Like sometimes my mom offers to do a swim ride for Gabe. Like I can get him there, but you know what? She's offering and I love it. And that would be really helpful. And I can kind of save that little bit of extra in me for, you know, it's really needed. It's
so funny because like we all feel better, I'm sure, with money in the bank. Like it's the same thing. Like you have a sense of being able to relax a little bit more when you have something there, when you're always running on empty, when you're always running with that emotional and physical clock like completely on E. Like we're not going to be the best versions of ourselves. But I feel like so many of us, something shifts when you become a mom and you just expect that you're supposed to be running on E. Yeah. And then the day you kind of say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to run on E anymore. Yeah. I'm going to run with a quarter of tank at all time. And I'm going to keep that there because I know that the shit storm's going to come. Like I know that I'm going to have 4 kids puking in the middle of the night. And I'm going to be so happy that I have a quarter of a tank of gas. Or I know that my husband and I are going to argue about something, or that something else is going to pop up business wise. And I'm going to be so happy that I have what I need, you know, to maintain whatever is going on. So you know what? I'm not going to give you that quarter of a tank anymore. I'm not going to run until empty. I'm going to put it in my pocket. Not
it
you
makes
in
me think of
general,
like the
but,
boiling
like,
pot. Like I always think of that,
Yeah.
and it's kind of keeping it like, don't turn it up too high. Like,
Yeah, you
don't
wanna-
give it all you got.
Yeah.
Like you got to save some of it, you know.
And if it does overflow, I mean, we're gonna land on E. I mean,
Yeah.
we're moms. Like we're going to give, and most of us, I would assume, are going to be pretty caring, wonderful individuals who are going to want to give and give and give. But really teaching yourself to operate maybe not in that entire place. And guys, this is like literally coming from an expert on giving every single thing I possibly can give every single day of my life since I was a kid. But starting to be a little bit more selfish about it. And asking for what you need, I think is like, yes, have people help you because that'll help as well.
Yeah.
But truly saying, hey, you know what? Like connection's important to me. Like I am going to go fill my tank because guess what? When you fill your tank, you're literally going to have more to give the people who normally get it.
Yeah. Agreed.
Which I just think is interesting. Like when you make the time for friendship, when you make the time, for alone time, when you make the time for the things that are important to you, hopefully that means you're going to have more to give.
Yeah.
So don't take on what you don't need to take on, guys. Save that for the people, in your life that really need it, and be selfish when you need to be.
Yeah. And I understand, you bring a new little one in and you have kids, and absolutely they need everything that you can give as a mother, as their mom. But you don't have to try and give them everything that they need from their dad or from your partner or from grandparents, and you don't have to take care so much of everybody else during that time.
And I think if we just put our arms and like minds around the idea that things are seasons. So just because you showed up for somebody's meal train for their last baby, but now for whatever reason, whether they know the reason or not, whether you know the reason or not, you're just super tired.
Yeah.
Like there's something weighing on you. You can't show up the same way this time. That's okay. Like you don't have to continually be raising the bar of how you show up for people in their lives.
Yeah.
And that's something that's been so hard for me to realize is that you matter and your needs matter. And then after that, your kids matter and your spouse matters or your loved ones matter. And there's always going to be a hierarchy, but we can't keep just running on empty and showing up again because we showed up before or whatever, because things change, things come up in life.
Yeah.
And I think we don't always have to be bettering ourselves in the sense of showing up for others.
Yeah, I have to remind myself, and this is more just like surface though. It's not super deep, but like the emails I'll get, hey, we're short on pencils in this class. We're short on this. Oh, we're doing a leprechaun project. Would anybody be able to donate boxes and craft paper and things like that? And oh, we need this. And oh yeah, here's a meal train. And oh, Susie needs that. Like, you want to help all the people, but you honestly can't. So I'll kind of say like, 1 month I will do something for third grade classroom for Penelope, and not everybody else gets help that month. And the next month I kind of pick something else, but it's kind of where I'm at and what I can do. And that's absolutely okay. And I don't have to help all the people, even if I possibly can, whether it's money or my time or my heart or communication or anything like that. I have to be very kind of cautious of how that works.
This brings up a couple of tips, and I don't know, how much of these are tips, but some of the things I've learned. Eric taught me very early on in this business that sometimes it's easier to write the check, which has been something that's been very hard for me, is like what we get a certain amount by giving and showing up, like giving ourselves and showing up and having that connection. But there are some times where you just have to buy the Girl Scout cookies instead of setting up a stand outside of your office where you have to get permits and make sure they're warm and fed and all of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a big difference between the two things. Sometimes you just have to show up in a more simple way. The second one is that I always smile when I think about the fact that like Brene Brown walks around apparently with a little piece of paper in her wallet of the people's opinions that matter to her. And if the feedback or the opinions or what's being said about her on social media or after a speech or whatever, if they're not being said by the people's names that are on the little piece of paper, then they don't matter. Names. And she just lets them go. And I think the same kind of has to be done with who you show up for and how you show up. I think there's always going to be days where we have enough in our tank to, go work at the soup kitchen or go work at the food pantry. And those are like those big things where we show up when our cups are full and we're feeling really great. But then I think there are going to be days where the people who really matter and the people who actually get to see you and get that extra from you are just the names on the list in your wallet, you know, those ones that really truly matter and those ones that see you. And I think that that's kind of just where I'm landing, is that, you know, if the thing is not feeding your cup back, I'm not talking about like the large acts of service or the giving with the privilege that you have to give and stuff, but truly thinking about those times where, you know, you're in the trenches and life is hard and it's just a journey, and what do you do with the extra? And you should give it back to the people who are going to hopefully give it back to you.
Yeah. And however you can show up and when you choose to is absolutely more than enough.
Yep.
No matter what it is, whether it's $5 to a classroom or one, you know, simple, like however it is. Cause I think we often compare ourselves. Oh, well, you know, Susie down the street, she's volunteering 4 times in the library. Yeah. Like, you know, maybe you don't have the time, but maybe you have a gift card that you could do or whatever. Just know that whatever you can and whatever you choose to do is enough.
And I think this is probably like a therapy skill for me that I've learned through passing that I don't even think I've actually even talked about learning or acknowledged until now. But that idea of actually checking in with yourself, of actually taking those moments of saying, hey, what do I have to give, instead of just giving? Because I think that that's when we get past empty, is like when we just give because that's who we are. We give and we give and we give, and we don't literally take that 30 seconds to a minute to say, what actually do I have to give? Yeah. Do I have anything to give? And what will this look like in the coming hours and days to come?
Or you've probably figured out how to survive on your credit to where you didn't really have it, but you gave it anyways.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it'll come back. And you kind of survive in that like below empty
but
stage.
what does that do to your body?
What is it
like,
really doing
physically
for you?
As well? Like, I mean, it's an emotional tax, but what is it also doing to your body? Like, you know, if you go to bed stressed out, are you going to get less sleep? Are you not going to eat as well? Like what is it going to actually do physically to your body? But I mean, I just gave and gave and gave and gave and gave. It probably would have killed me at some point, like just in the sense of just constantly having that so tied up in actually who I was and my self-worth without actually checking in. Yeah. And really realizing, wow, this has gotten a lot deeper than I expected to today. But I don't know. I mean, I think just learning to check in with yourself, because you matter.
Like, take care of you.
Yep.
You're taking care of that new little one, and yes, the people around you, but make sure you're checking in and taking care of you.
You're just as important as everybody else. Yeah. Thanks, guys.